with us. Glad we have a chance to get together and study here in the middle of the week. Always look forward to those. Last week we introduced the idea, I guess, or kind of the general grouping of the minor prophets, and that's where we're going to be for the next several weeks. As I mentioned last week, I don't know exactly how long we will spend here. I'm not intending to spend very much time on any of the books. Really no more than 1 week per each. Some of them we might be able to combine together. But I do want to just take a kind of overview type survey of these books. We look at them relatively rarely, to be honest. I think probably to our detriment. We lose a little bit of biblical literacy that way. We lose a little bit of some of the points the New Testament is making in that way. And what we'll see, especially with a book like Hosea tonight, there are simply some images, there are simply some passages and setups and concepts within these books that are so powerful. They're kind of unique in the way that they might portray something large, something profound to us that we're missing out if we don't take those lessons in. So I do think it'll be a good use of our time over the next several weeks. And tonight we will do that as mentioned and as we see there with the book of Hosea. We'll introduce him a little bit and just spend a few moments on some of the highlights sort of tonight in our time together. Again, glad you're all here. Let's begin with a prayer tonight and then study together. Our Almighty God, we're thankful for this evening, for the safety you've given us in coming here tonight, for the time that we get to spend together. We're thankful for all those who are here and pray that you would be with each one of us in our individual lives away from this place, and that you would help us as a body, as members of your family, to be good to each other, to be helpful and strong and encouraging to one another. We're thankful for your word and all the different forms it has taken and all the different stories that you have told. We are thankful for the life that it gives, for the hope that it gives. We pray tonight as we look at your word together that we would be properly instructed by it, that we would look to it with zeal and reverence and with enthusiasm. We're grateful that we can see your mind communicated to us so clearly and so powerfully. Be with us tonight as we study. We pray in your Son's name. Amen. All right, just by way of kind of looking at the basics. Who is this man in general? What's going on and when's he working? Let's take a little bit of time to set up who Hosea is. Now, he'll mention a few of the kind of bare facts in Hosea chapter 1 and verse 1. They're just in the first verse of the book. One of the things he'll do is set up the time period in which he's operating. And we'll talk about this in a little bit as well, but there's kind of some interesting parts to the chronology that he's setting up there. Because as you can see, he mentions 4 kings of Judah, the southern nation. This is during the divided kingdom era, but when both kingdoms are still around for now. He's kind of on the tail end of Israel. But so you have 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south. Those first men mentioned are kings of Judah, and he says that, Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. So 4 kings of Judah, and then mentions only this one, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. We call him Jeroboam the second, usually. He's not the first king of Israel with that name. But Jeroboam is kind of the lone representative for Israel. And I say that's kind of interesting chronology. I've got some of the dates mentioned up there. Those kings of Judah that are mentioned, if you go from Uzziah to Hezekiah, the reign that they have is over 100 years. And then you have Jeroboam in the south mentioned, who is far less than that. He's 40 years. And so that's opening up a few questions, maybe. If he's just during the time of Jeroboam, then you wouldn't need to mention all of these other guys. So our questions, I guess, are how long did Hosea prophesy, which it seems like is probably a long time all told, and why are we not mentioning some of the other kings of Israel is the other kind of interesting part of that. Again, I think we'll address some of that here in just a moment, but kind of an oddity that it begins with, where you have 2 periods of time that aren't really similar to one another in very many ways. We don't really know anything about him outside of what is told about him during the book. The first 3 chapters, of course, give some they have sort of a narrative quality and will tell us about some of the misfortunes of his family. He's famous for that. That's what we'll spend a lot of our time talking about tonight. But outside of that, we don't know anything about him. He's not going to show up anywhere else. He tells us his father's name. That's about it. So we don't know anything about his background, what his job was, what town he was from, how old he was when all of this happened. Any of that kind of thing is just kind of left to the imagination. He seems to have been from Israel. Just sort of the way he talks about things, the lack of any mention of him being an outsider. Amos, for instance, we mentioned Amos and Hosea being very complementary. They're roughly in the same time, and they both prophesy to the north. But Amos is a southerner. He's from Judah, and maybe that accounts for some of his harshness and that he doesn't hold back anything, because he's kind of, in a lot of ways, talking to an enemy nation. They're still Israel. They're still God's people, but they are not of his people still in that way. But Hosea does not really have that element to him, so we just assume that he was a local there somewhere in Israel, maybe in Samaria. He talks most of the time to Israel, and you'll see Ephraim being the term or the word that's used a lot of times to talk about northern Israel. That's a sort of shorthand that a lot of the prophets use. We'll probably encounter language like that more as we go, but when you read in a prophet Ephraim, probably just talking about the north, Israel. So there's the basics. Well, what's Israel like in this time period, that sort of general setup that we have? And we anticipate him starting, around 750, I guess, would be a good general time era for Hosea to be working. So Jeroboam the second is the third descendant. He's the great-grandson of King Jehu of Israel, who we read about in 2 Kings chapter 10. All right, what significance might there be to how many generations after Jehu this guy is, Jeroboam? Maybe a kind of deep-cut trivia question, but this is one of the more important aspects of Jehu's reign, actually. All right, Jehu is one of the only kings of Israel who does virtually anything good. He starts out pretty well, in fact. He is sent by God. He's anointed by God specifically for the task of carrying out some punishment against the house of Ahab, who we maybe know more about. He's kind of a more famous guy. Ahab and Jezebel, your favorite Israelite couple. They're terrible, of course. They're wicked. They're bloodthirsty. Jehu is sent to sort of clean house. He is supposed to eradicate that house. And he does so. And he gets rid of a lot of Baal worshipers, Baal prophets and priests. And that's good. But then at some point he keeps going, or he does some things for the wrong reasons, or he engages in his own kind of bloodthirst and bloodlust, and that will be referred to in the book of Hosea. But as a result of Jehu beginning well and doing some things that God had told him to do, Jehu is promised, there in chapter 10, verse 30, 2 Kings 10:30, Jehu is promised that your children will be on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation, is what he's promised. This is a kind of an oddity, especially for late Israel, because they don't always follow this sort of unbroken familial, lineal descent that you see in Judah, where you have all these sons of David. In Israel, you can be the son of Bob if you want, and you can be king. If you can kill the current king, it's kind of up for grabs a lot of times. So to have 4 descendants, that's 5 total generations. Jehu is very rare in that respect. But when we get to Jeroboam, we're on number 3 out of that 4. So we're getting very, very close to the end. And to kind of ruin the surprise, number 4 is not going to last very long. He's not going to last a year, in fact. So when you get to the end of Jeroboam's reign, you've really reached the end of that promise made to Jehu. That deal is almost complete, I guess we would say. The terms of that are almost fulfilled. But Jeroboam himself seems in some ways, maybe in many ways, to have been a good king. Not morally, not spiritually. But the record, you can turn there if you want. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time setting him up, but this does kind of set up in our minds the time and place in which Hosea is working. You read 2 Kings 14, beginning in verse 25, and you see what sounds like a lot of success, what sounds like a lot of good things that are going on. They're reclaiming some land that they had lost to enemies. And it mentions that God was in those days not going to destroy Israel, that he decided and evidently told some people, I don't know, maybe Hosea, maybe there's kind of an oblique reference to some of the things Hosea might say, that it's going to happen later, but maybe he told some other prophets as well that this downfall I've been warning you about, it's not going to happen yet. It's not going to happen maybe to some of you because it's going to wait for a little while, and there will be about 30 years that Israel holds on after Jeroboam's death. But God tells him, I'm not going to punish you right now. They reclaim land. They have success in battle. When the king's writer is giving his sort of eulogy or writing the epitaph for Jeroboam II, he talks about his deeds. He says, look at his might and all the wars that he fought. Aren't they written in the books of the Chronicles of the Kings? And so he's kind of pointing us towards heroic deeds and successes. They've got this kind of revitalization in Israel. It turns out to be, I've classified it there, it's an Indian summer, that kind of meaning that it feels like maybe we're going to be coming back, but no, it was just for a couple of weeks. It's going to start getting cold again or whatever it is. But they have this brief moment in the sun again where things seem to be going well. The nation during this time period, very prosperous. From an outside perspective, the outsider looking at it, someone purely interested in the political landscape or the military landscape, they're going to see a nation on the rise. They're starting to kind of get back some of their lost glory and be back to where they want to be. It all seems to be going pretty well when the nation is under Jeroboam. Now, immediately following that, we've alluded to this already, you are going to see just a whirlwind, kind of one after another, of coups and assassinations and all different kinds of disasters that befall the nation. As I mentioned, it's only about 30 years from Jeroboam's death till the nation is carried away captive by the Assyrians, and in that 30 years you have 6 kings. Only one of them dies of natural causes. The others are all killed, or one burns the house down on himself. I guess you would call that suicide. The rest are all murdered by some conspirators who wanted to take the throne. So a very violent history after this point. It is really only Jeroboam is in that way kind of the end, or he's the beginning of the end at least, which is what we would expect from what Hosea is saying, and even from what Jehu was told even years before that. So this is the last gasp of Israel. This is their last few moments of peace and prosperity before things just rapidly ascend downhill. So, all right, I've mentioned, okay, for the outside person looking in, it looks kind of good, but it isn't really good, and Hosea will have a lot to say that points out that it's not good at all. Spiritually speaking, it's rotten. The most important credential attached to Jeroboam in 2 Kings isn't about his might or his mighty acts of valor or the wars that he fought or the land that he reclaimed. It's one of the first statements made concerning him, which is a recurring theme all throughout 1 and 2 Kings. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. It says he did exactly what his father, Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had first introduced that idolatry into Israel, he does what he did. They all follow that same pattern, even when they're not blood relatives. They live in the same way. He did what Jehu did. He did what all the others do. So you find this common theme coming up over and over. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He's not a godly man. He's an idolater. He's wicked. He is corrupt. Really, we'll see some of the abuses mentioned in Hosea 4 through 7. We probably, as I mentioned, won't give a lot of attention to those tonight, but that's sort of where the charge is brought. Another term to keep your eyes open for when you're reading through the prophets. There in Hosea chapter 4, verse 1, the Lord brings a charge against the inhabitants of the land. When you see that phrase, the Lord brings a charge against you, that means he's about to tell us what they did wrong. He's about to get into specifics. It's kind of a legal term. It's like a formal legal complaint that is being made. When you get brought into court and you stand in front of the judge and they say, "What are the charges?" And they say, "Well, larceny or grand theft auto," or whatever it is. They're going to tell you what you're being accused of. Well, that's what Hosea 4:1 is, and that's what you see numerous times throughout the prophets. The Lord brings a charge. All right, tell us what we've done. And Hosea 4-7, 4 chapters where God tells them, here's what you've done. I mean, here's all the ways in which you have disappointed yourselves and myself and everyone else, all of the various sins. So, as the king goes, so the people go, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes it is that way. And so we see a nation that is steeped in idolatry and corruption, and they harm each other, and they do violence against each other. But most importantly, they simply have no commitment to, they have no love, no evident love for God. They just refuse to obey him. So a bad spiritual situation. All right. Hosea is most known for what we find of him in chapters 1-3. And really the book is probably most known for the setup that we find in these first 3 chapters. Just kind of the general conceit of the book is this idea where the Lord first speaks to Hosea with orders not to go preach, not to go proclaim repentance to someone. We'll get to that later. But Hosea's career as a prophet begins instead in chapter 1, verse 2. Go take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord. So here is the terrible burden that Hosea begins with. Take this wife of harlotry. The exact meaning of that is unclear. The literal meaning is approximately just that this is a promiscuous woman. And there's debate, I think ultimately kind of useless debate probably about what is, was she a professional prostitute? Was she just someone who had low morals? What exactly was going on? I don't know. The idea, sort of the important thing seems to be that Hosea seems to know, and God definitely knows, that this woman, possibly before, but definitely after you marry her, is going to fall into sexual sin. She is going to be promiscuous, and that is going to happen while you are married. And I believe because that's sort of the expectation set up from the beginning, that it likely was a woman who, maybe not professional in the sense that we tend to think about it. I mean, we're not going to have a 30-minute class on prostitution in the ancient world, but it was kind of a different idea than we tend to think of today, largely because a lot of times a promiscuous woman, as is being described there, is not going to be married and therefore does not really have a lot of ways available to her of making an income, and is maybe not going to be found in a brothel necessarily, but is going to live on the gifts given to her by her various lovers. Whatever is going on with this woman, Hosea knows what he is getting into. He knows what the arrangement is going to be. So he does that. He went and took this woman, Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. They begin to have children immediately. The first, just to kind of quickly, because the children play into things as well, of course, but the first son is born, and you notice in verse 3, Hosea 1, verse 3, she conceived and bore him a son. This son is given a symbolic name, a prophetic name, Jezreel, and this refers back to a place. It's a geographical name that God explains is going to avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu. Some of the acts that he committed, again, either went too far from what God was telling him or done with the wrong spirit, or there were extra things that he did, I don't know. But the blood that he shed there is going to be revisited on his house. Again, that's the current king, right? That's Jeroboam that he's talking about. So there's the first son. Now in verse 6, she conceived again and bore a daughter. Notice the difference between verse 3 and verse 6. Do you see kind of a conspicuous absence in verse 6? Him. Okay. This one, who did she conceive that son or that daughter with and bear her to? Well, we aren't told. She just had a baby. Who's the father? Could be anyone, is already sort of the impression that we're getting. This daughter, this poor child, again, given a symbolic prophetic name, No Mercy, is the translation of that, because God explains, I will no longer have mercy or pity or compassion on the house of Israel. I will utterly take them away. I'll have compassion on the house of Judah. Okay, the north is going to meet something far worse than they will in the south, for now at least. Verse 8, once again, no father mentioned. She just conceives and bears a son, and this son is called Not My People. For one, an astonishing thing to name a child of dubious parentage. It's kind of being upfront with things maybe, but more importantly has, again, this symbolic meaning behind it. But that's almost as shocking as the other one. For God to tell his prophet, the name I'm telling you to name your child that symbolizes what's going on with me and my people is that you call them not my people. That's serious, isn't it? I mean, that's a huge statement for God to make. Call his name, Lo am I, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God. This sounds very harsh. This sounds very clean and clear that there's a break being made. This is very serious language, very harsh language that is being employed right here off the bat. But all of this that happens is not just God wanting to mess with Hosea and just, I want to have a pincushion guy that I'm just going to make him suffer, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what he does with it. Hosea's life and the dramatic personal drama, personal tragedy that plays out there is a symbol. We see oftentimes in the prophet's speech acts, we call them a lot of times speech acts, that are, you call them illustrations, or, a visual aid maybe would be what we'd think of, where, Jeremiah takes a clay pot or flask and he breaks it, and then he says, here's what it means. Or he wears a yoke and he says, here's what's going to happen to us. Nebuchadnezzar is going to put a yoke on us. We're going to be beasts of burden under him. Or Ezekiel makes this little model of Jerusalem and kind of plays out acting like he is besieging that little model of the city. You have prophets doing a lot of stuff with some kind of visual aid, some kind of thing that they're going to show, and then they explain it. They tell them what it means. They tell the people what it means. All of this that happens is a high-stakes, personally painful speech act that Hosea carries out with his life, because it isn't just something that happens to him. It isn't just some suffering he went through. It has a plain meaning. And so God is using this to show the people what is happening in their relationship between the people and God, between Israel and God. Is the same thing that is happening between Hosea and his wife. In chapter 3 and verse 1, when he is sending Hosea back to marry this woman, to take her back again, he puts it very plainly. He says, you do this. Go again, love a woman who is loved by a lover and is committing adultery, just like the love of the Lord for the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love the raisin cakes of the pagans. So that simile there, that comparison, just like the love of the Lord, that's what Hosea is going to be demonstrating through his life with Gomer, with this woman that he has taken on to be his wife. This is what Hosea is called to do personally. This is what God has been doing with the nation. And you see it playing out in a touching way, a moving way, I guess, even from the beginning. I mean, we cut off in verse 9 of chapter 1, In chapter 1, verse 9, we cut off earlier, where that third child is born and the name is given, and it sounds as bad as it could possibly be, where God is saying, you are not my people, and I am not your God. But then, what does verse 10 say? Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which can't be measured or numbered. And it will come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there it shall be said to them, you are sons of the living God. So he's going to undo that. He's going to restore them. He's going to bring them back in. And again, that's what happens. All of those terrible pronouncements are reversed. You see it again later in chapter 2. The one who has said, no mercy, God says, I'll have mercy on her who had not obtained mercy. I'll say to those who are not my people, you are my people. And they will say, you are my God. And that's what Hosea is told to do. Through whatever happens, and again, the details are maybe kind of scarce with exactly what happens in the Hosea-Gomer household, but she seems to have left him entirely, seems to have abandoned him and gone away off. And in chapter 3, he is sent then to rescue her, to literally buy her back. She's fallen into slavery, it seems, by this point. And so he's going to have to actually purchase his wife to bring her back into his home. I bought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and for some barley. So she has become so destitute, she has been so let down by her lovers, by the other men that she was going to instead of her husband, that she finds herself in the direst straits possible after the marriage crumbles. But here Hosea is, and God tells him, bring her back into your home, and that is going to be a symbol to the people of the love that I have for them. Your love for her will be just like my love for them. So, let's look briefly at some takeaways just from these first 3 chapters. Again, this is kind of the main point of the book. We will see things afterward that are important and useful. Basically, generally speaking, chapters 4 through 7, as we talked about, is God bringing his charge against Israel. Then in chapters 8 through 10, you see kind of a warning and God telling them, look, it is about to happen, that punishment is coming. And then the remainder of chapters 11 through 14 are kind of holding out the hope of restoration, kind of getting back to that idea of there ultimately being a reconciliation between the two. But really, everything that's set up here in chapters 1 through 3, that's the enduring symbol of this book, and this kind of rare insight that we get into that relationship. And this becomes, from this point, a kind of common way for us to think about God's relationship to his people as of being a husband and wife. And it endures into the New Testament age, where you see Christ and the church being looked at in this through this same lens as being bride and bridegroom. So something that really has its beginning here in Hosea and opens up a lot of doors to understanding for us, I think. First, let's recognize here, this puts it in very, very manageable, sometimes uncomfortably human terms, how serious it is to do what Israel has been doing, to go after other gods. He calls it spiritual adultery. He puts following after an idol on the same plane. That is what someone is doing to God. It's the most obvious lesson. It's the most colorful lesson, but it's one of the strongest that we find in the book. When we are not faithful to God, it is the same kind of wound. It is the same kind of betrayal. It is the same kind of sin as when you see a person being unfaithful to their spouse. We weep with Hosea. We think of what he's being called to do there, and you think, that's tough. That's a tough one to have to do. Not even just that it happens to him, but he goes into it knowing that it's going to happen. And then it happens, and then God says, go back again and keep at it. And he's got to go back and keep at it. Yeah, we feel for him. But it's the same with our God when we are unfaithful to him. We don't worship Baal today. That's what the problem was for Israel. But we're familiar enough with the idea of idolatry, we know that the same problem persists and exists today, and we look for some other thing outside of and at the expense of our commitment to God. It's that same kind of spiritual adultery that we find Hosea warning about. Seriously consider for ourselves. What are we choosing to do daily? Who are we choosing to follow daily? Who is our commitment truly made to? Oftentimes, it isn't God. He's the one who gets the leftovers. And hopefully we see from giving our attention to a book like Hosea the pain of that, the cost of that in our relationship to God, that you can't keep going that way. You can't truly have a relationship when that is the case. That there's been a fundamental breakdown. We have to correct that. All right, I know I've been talking a lot this evening. Anything to add here before we move on into some other takeaways from this? Comments, questions, anything to add on to what we've been saying so far? Yeah.
It seems to be trivial things, but there's in that 3 verse 1, there's idea of raising cakes. Is that those offerings that were made to other gods?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a pretty trivial thing to exchange God for.
Yeah. Yeah. What would be the worth? I mean, could you not set this stuff aside that is just not useful? You don't need to do it, clearly. Trivial things that are being exchanged, I think, is a good way to look at it, and we'll talk about some more of that in a minute. Yeah. Robert?
I think that point up there about recognizing how the seriousness of the matter is critical to these opening verses. Hosea is asked to do, or told rather, to do something that not every man would be on board with.
Yeah.
And now they have kids. He's going to come home all the time, and it's going to be a constant reminder. And you just wonder, he's not going to lose sight of this important fact.
Yeah.
But looking at that point, it's easy for us to kind of shove that back in the corner somewhere where we don't really want to address it. We don't really want to come to terms with the fact that we too can be in that position if we're not.
Yeah. Yeah, and how absurd would it be to be in that home, and while that's going on, while your wife is continuing to produce children that you don't know if they're yours or not, wouldn't it be ludicrous to be coming into that home every day and going, oh, this is all fine, this is all, it's all okay, it's about where the relationship should be, not anything else that needs to happen, this is fine, everything's okay here. Well, why would we meander through life giving ourselves over to everything along with God, and then just kind of have that same view of things that no, it's generally okay. I go to church every once in a while. It's not like I stay out every night. I come home sometimes. So yeah, we're okay. This is fine. No, it's not. This is a serious dysfunction that you have here. And that lack of commitment to God. Same thing. All right. And these all look at kind of the same idea, maybe just from different aspects. Obviously, in being called to continue to love his wife, and that is the order that's given. It isn't just a grudging acceptance back in. He's told to love his wife, and in fact, we'll look in chapter 2 in just a minute. Look in chapter 2, verse 14. We'll talk about it in a sec. Yeah.
God tells is consistent throughout the Bible. If a man takes a wife, he is to love his wife.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference whether she's a harlot or what she is, because you don't know
Yeah.
necessarily what you're getting into until you get into it.
Yeah.
So, there are signs, but if you ignore the signs, or if you what's another word I'm looking for? You don't think about it in terms of how this is going to impact you later on down the line, or
Yeah.
impact your family. So it's vitally important not only that you choose wisely, but you choose righteously.
Yeah. very good advice to take to heart.
Easy to say, hard to do.
Very much that as well, as with many things. Easy to, in the light of day, easy to say that, but difficult to always have that wisdom in the moment, I guess.
Really, in that first chapter too, God's promises are still going to be met because
Yes.
down there with the sons of Israel will be like the sands of the sea.
Yeah.
So he's not going to just eliminate them.
Yes. As we mentioned from the beginning, I mean, almost as soon as the harshest pronouncement has been made, he immediately begins going about saying, not permanently, not forever. There is a way back. And that's what unfolds very, very powerfully, I think, in chapter 2, especially beginning there in verse 14. It's a dramatic reversal. Because again, not only is Hosea told, okay, let her come back home, let her stay in the house again, or something like that. When God is describing what he does for the nation of Israel, he's really setting things up to look like he's courting her. Like it's new young love between two people who have strong feelings and emotions towards each other and want to be together. He says, I will allure her. I'll bring her into the wilderness and speak comfort to her. I'll give her vineyards from there. The valley of Achor is a door of hope, and she will sing there, as in the days of her youth, as in the days when she came up from the land of Egypt. He's showing this kind of tender affection that he has. It's a picture of God who never ceases in his love. He's making her feel happy. He's making her feel loved. He is giving her joy. He gives her, in verse 16, a kinder name to know him by. You won't call me Lord, you'll call me husband. And literally the word there, that husband that's used, is man. You'll call me your man. So they're brought back into this warm, loving relationship. That's an incredible thing, to see the love of God displayed that profoundly. And again, this is a difficult thing for a human to do. A very difficult thing for us, even if we know I'm supposed to love my neighbor and supposed to love my enemy and supposed to love those who have wronged me and supposed to love my spouse no matter what, all these things. But it's hard for us to forgive slights, even small ones. It's hard for us to move past things. In Hosea's case, we might call it foolish to step right back into it. What he's being told to do in chapter 3, verse 1, you have to know. Many of his friends, any of the townspeople, anybody who knows what's going on, man, I can't believe what an idiot this guy is. Doesn't he know what's going to happen? Doesn't he know what she's been doing? How could you go back into that willingly? What are you thinking in doing that? That would be a scandalous thing, largely because if we look at their law, you look in Deuteronomy 24, in the case of a divorce at least, and it doesn't specifically say that they have been divorced, they're still married, I suppose, even though she's out doing who knows what. But in the case of a divorce, when a woman leaves and a man is going about his own business too, those two can't get married again after a divorce. We talked about this not too long ago, I guess, in our class from Mark. The provision that Moses gives there in Deuteronomy chapter 24. A man puts away his wife, he gives her a certificate of divorce. What does that do? One of the things, maybe the main thing he's talking about in that chapter that it accomplishes is it tells you those two people can't get back together. If you're going to do that, it's permanent. You're not going to go, well, okay, we feel better about it now, so come back. No, it's permanent. It's done when that happens. This would be, maybe we'd say, a legal gray area. Again, I don't know if they were divorced, but I am sure, again, to many people of the time, something that doesn't sit well with me. Imagine if two people divorce and she is married to some other man, and you'd say, well, then they can't get back together. Imagine a woman who has been away from her husband and has been with many men and has been having children with many other men. then what would the scandal be in saying, well, yeah, the original couple will get back together? That might be something that troubles people. I like what Dwayne Garrett says about it. Grace triumphs over righteous jealousy and the demands of the law. Like the cross itself, Hosea's action is a stumbling block. A man doesn't normally take back a woman who's behaved the way Gomer did. I like the allusion there, and I think that's exactly the point that we are meant to take away from all of this. Like the cross, it is a stumbling block. It is something that doesn't compute in our minds, that doesn't make sense to a person. How would God do this through this? Why would God do this to us? Why would you do that? How can that be the way that it happens? And that is the kind of scandalous part of the love that God has for his people, that it's not how we would do things, that it doesn't seem fair, that it doesn't seem wise, whatever that means, that it just isn't something that immediately makes sense to us. But it's love that motivates Hosea, and ultimately, obviously, it's love that motivates God, even heartbroken. It motivates them to restore. You see one of the other powerful verses later in the book, chapter 11 and verse 8. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? Is what he is asking after he's talked about the punishment that is going to come to them. How can I do that? My heart churns within me. My sympathy is stirred. I can't do it permanently. I can't do it for real, we might say. There's always going to have to be this reconciling that takes place afterward. She is going to be, and chapter 2 lays all this out as well. She is brought down to the lowest of lows. She is humbled, is stripped away, literally speaking, but also symbolically, metaphorically. She has everything stripped from her. And in that circumstance, then can understand and can realize my place is with my husband. My place is with him. And that is the process God is going to use for the nation of Israel. That's the point of all this captivity. That's the point of Assyria. That's the point of Babylon. That's the point of 70 years of exile. That's the point of the temple being destroyed and the city being razed. That's the point, is to show them, you don't have anything without me. Your place is by my side. I will love you. I will take care of you, but we do that together or not at all. And so a final lesson from this, I guess. I have a minute or two left. Just the total commitment, really a radical commitment to God that is necessitated. And I think maybe especially from verse 16, we get that image. I referred to this verse a moment ago. Shall be in that day, says the Lord, chapter 2, 16. It'll be in that day, says the Lord, that you will call me my husband and no longer call me my master. That translation obscures a little bit because the text in the final word there, my master, is my Baal, B-A-A-L, the God that we see Israel worshiping at this time, kind of in contest with God. Baal was just a word that could apply to many things. Lord, a ruler over someone, a master, a husband, citizens of a nation, warriors. Certainly gods would be called Baals. So there seems to be more to that than just saying, you won't have to address me with a really respectful title. You can call me your man, your husband. It's more to say, the people are going to refer to God in a different way, and what is going to be absent from their mouths is any possibility of, any hint of language that would vestigially show their interest in Baal, that would show any kind of history that they might have had with all of the idolatry that they were formerly guilty of. You're not going to call me your Lord, you're Baal. You're going to call me your husband. You're going to see that relationship and call me your God. But during this time that this is being written, they probably were calling Jehovah their Baal, their Lord, in that sense. That's one of the ways those religions got syncretized, especially in the northern kingdom. Yes, we have an altar to Jehovah. Yes, we've got his lawn. We do some of that stuff sometimes. We offer him sacrifices. We also do it to a lot of other gods. We also do it to all these various Canaanite deities that we've imported, the Asherahs and the Baals and all of those. Jehovah is just one Baal that's maybe a little older than the others, or that we've known of for longer, and maybe is more local to this place. So he's our Baal, sure. That's a way of showing that they were with him, but with a lot of other people. But God says, in the end, and that day, in the final day, that's not going to be the language you use. There's going to be no hint of that. A people who've changed so completely that they avoid even the possibility of what might look like that kind of spiritual adultery. This is not people trying to find the line and get as close to it as possible. This is people saying, no, we are with God and we're not doing anything else. We are only with him. All right, we're getting overrun here. So, finish up there for this evening, and we'll look forward to next week. Thanks you.